Putting aside our sorrow, we renewed our faith in the prophecy that other rings would be found, and see how our faith has been rewarded.
The Covenant used to be the main threat, and it was a MacGuffin in the original Halo series because the real threat was the Forerunner legacy and the Flood itself.
SpongeBob, quick, reel it in! Can't you hear the music? That's a 4/4 string ostinato in D minor! Every sailor knows it means death! Reel it in before it's too late!
Ah, Halo. One of the most iconic series in gaming, and recently gaining some new attention with the restructuring of 343 into Halo Studios. It seems like Halo will be taking a new direction. Whether that's going to be a good or bad thing, only time will tell.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
And amidst all the arguments I've been seeing online amongst the fan base about the direction of the series, I decided to go back and revisit some of the original games, and I realized something. How important the Flood were to the overall story of Halo. And while I've enjoyed some aspects of the new Halo games, I've personally found that their stories were disjointed and unconnected, and none of the games has felt as compelling or as high stakes as the original trilogy. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a lot of those issues could be solved in the future by bringing back the Flood as the secondary villain in the mainline games. So I decided to put this video together. So this is my argument for why the Flood need to return to Halo. Number 1. A threat the universe needs. Maybe it's just me, but it feels like ever since Halo 3, Halo's been struggling to have a compelling secondary antagonist. After 3's spectacular ending, we just haven't really gotten a villain with such big consequences as the Flood if they achieve their goals. It was literally a universal threat, a threat that kick-started the story, the catalyst behind the human Forerunner War, the building and the firing of the Halo rings, and the reason that the Prometheans were originally made. Hell, most things in the Halo universe eventually come back to the Flood being this galactic level threat. And I think it's the threat that the universe needs. Remember how Combat Evolved introduced the Flood as this massive twist in the story? And how they were the only things that the Covenant feared and were such a massive galaxy-wide problem that even way back at the height of their power, the Forerunners couldn't contain them? So they built the Halo rings to eradicate all their food as this Hail Mary scorched earth victory to try to stop the Flood from taking over everything? It's pretty high stakes, and it adds a lot of motivation for us to try to find a way to stop the Flood threat from spreading. So after something like that, who else do we have as a secondary villain in the story? The Prometheans? Well, they were an interesting threat at first, but they don't really fill the role as well as a galactic level threat like the Flood. Don't believe me? Let's take a second to ask some questions about the Prometheans. Number 1, what's their motivation? Well, the Diadact is a space racist, and he hates humanity because he's a bitter old boomer that doesn't want them to assume the mantle.
Humanity's imprisonment is a kindness.
Oh, and he's also a Sith Lord, so, you know, he's gotta be on Team Evil.
A Sith Lord?
Number 2, what threat do they pose? Well, the Diadact wants to use the Composer to turn humans into more Prometheans because, again, he's a space racist Dark Lord of the Sith. Also, by the way, the whole reason the Composer was created in the first place was to turn biological organisms into robots to try to combat, you guessed it, the Flood. And then after that, we have Cortana and the Created taking control of the Prometheans because Halo 4 killed its main villain, so you gotta keep the train rolling somehow. Which, by the way, how did Cortana survive that?
How did she get here?
The Didact ship was pulled into slip space.
After I saw John last, I was pulled into slip space.
Tactical now!
That's where I found access to the domain.
Oh, okay, she went into the computer and cured her rampancy. Well, as long as she entered the computer on the Diadact ship, that makes sense.
Cortana! The Didact ship was pulled into slipspace.
And now, despite all that she's done for humanity, Cortana's tired of that shit. She don't want any more to do with that, alright? She wants to be the big bad guy now, change the posters, no more good guy. And she's got a plan to awaken the Guardians and to threaten the galaxy into submission with this new galactic level threat. Which, why are the Guardians a threat? In Halo 5, it tells us that the Guardians are a problem, that they're running around all willy-nilly and destroying worlds, but it never shows us the Guardians doing really anything. Hell, all that we see them doing is just floating around menacingly.
He's just standing there, menacingly.
Well, I guess that's not true. We see them scream a couple times and they shake the screen around, but that couldn't even kill a team of Spartans, so I don't know why they're such a problem. But I'm sure we'll eventually see, not like they would do that off screen or anything.
We're just gonna run? Only until we could find a way to fight.
So that was a fucking lie.
Like, remember in 343 Guilty Spark when we see all the bodies on the ground and it's this really tense, creepy atmosphere? We see the Covenant running and Marines are cowering in this building that clearly a battle had just taken place in? And the whole first part of that mission is quiet and full of tension because it's showing us the devastation of the Flood before we were formally introduced to them. And that even an enemy as powerful as the Covenant is crushed and cowers in fear to them. And like I said earlier, the Prometheans were created to fight the Flood. An army of humans turned into robots so that they couldn't be infected by the parasite. So at the very least, I wish that the Flood made a return just to make the Prometheans' introduction pay off for the overall story. And that would have been awesome to see a battle between the Prometheans and the Flood, fighting it out on a ring in this massive four-way battle between the UNSC, the Banished, the Prometheans, and the Flood. But alas, I don't think the Prometheans will be returning in the near future. And then we have the Endless, who I assume got that name because that's how long we have to wait before we figure out how they're significant.
Got him!
Now I've already shit on the Prometheans a bit, but to their credit, they actually do something. They have a presence in the story. Halo Infinite does so much to hype up the Endless, the Harbinger talking, all those empty silences that you pass by, and then nothing. No payoff, no appearance, nothing. Like, what was the point of all that for something that's supposed to be this massive threat? They lack presence.
My time is ended. Yours too. They will make sure.
Oh no, what do we do? I'm so scared.
Now compare that to the Flood's presence through the original Halo trilogy. Combat Evolved, we find a hidden secret buried in the swamp and locked on the ring. The Flood are unleashed, and it's up to us to find a way to stop them from spreading across the galaxy. They try to take the Pillar of Autumn's wreckage, and we use that to self-destruct and escape spectacularly, stopping the Flood and saving the day. In Halo 2, we find out that the Flood actually have a leader called a Gravemind, and that the Flood are actually a collective conscience of all the organisms that have been consumed by the Flood parasite. The Gravemind sends the Chief into the Covenant capital High Charity in a calculated move to infect the Covenant capital and to give the Flood a ship that they can use to spread across the galaxy, raising the conflict to galactic level crisis and setting the stage for the conclusion to the original trilogy, which gets us into Halo 3. The Flood takes the newly acquired High Charity to arrive at Earth and start an attack on the human homeworld and on the Ark, where we eventually set off a brand new Halo ring, killing the Flood and the Gravemind and ending the threat. Though I will deduct points for Halo 3 for not actually showing us the Gravemind and instead relegating him to just an annoying voice that shakes our screen around.
Child of my enemy, why have you come?
Little pig, let me in.
Well, my point of saying that is that every Flood appearance served a purpose. It established the Flood as a threat. It established a leader of the Flood as a primary villain who then established the Flood's motive and their end goal. And it continued to remind us how much the Flood were a universal threat by showing us the devastation of the Flood, not by telling us. Now, what do the Endless do? Well, they establish a leader in the Harbinger, sure. but they never show us why the Endless are a threat. They only tell us that they are, leaving us to endlessly wait to see what they're all about. Number 2, they're just fun to fight. This one's short, sweet, and to the point, but the Flood were just so much fun to fight. And I know that could be considered a personal opinion, but they were just so fun to fight against. They were so much different than how the Covenant fought you, and it was this nice little treat to get to mix up your playstyle and what weapons you were rocking, so that the whole game wasn't just going between the Covenant Carbine, Plasma Pistols, and that OG Mighty Magnum. And man, how cool was it to just dual rock those SMGs and go blasting your way through hordes of Flood, or how exciting their introduction in 343 Guilty Spark was, with a tense atmosphere, and then the confusing chaos of trying to escape the facility. The Flood were just such a memorable part of Halo. And if we fast forward to later entries, we don't really get that anymore. The Prometheans were just downright annoying and tedious to fight, and I just feel like we're missing that nice change of pace. So how could the Flood return to the mainline Halo series? Well, we already got a nice little tease of a return with their appearance in the Halo Wars 2 Awakening the Nightmare DLC, so we have an easy in. And we know that in the canon story, the Flood are still present in the Halo galaxy. So it wouldn't be crazy to think that the Flood could overtake a banished ship to start a Flood outbreak across the galaxy again, and making them once more the greatest threat in the Halo universe. But that's all I got for now, and now I want to hear what you guys think about the Flood returning to Halo. Let's continue the conversation down in the comments, and if you guys agree, leave a like and make sure to subscribe to see more in the future. But that's all I got for today. So until the next time, remember, I'm the Virtual Viking, and I am out.